11 says we need to use the diagram to answer the question. And here it looks like there's a picture of a cell that has 30% solute and 70% water. And that's in a container with 10% solute and 90% water. And the question asks, predict the movement of water in the situation shown above. The key here is that they're asking about water movement. So the water would move into the cell, causing it to swell. Well, let's look at these concentrations. We have a high concentration of water outside the cell and a lower concentration of water inside the cell. And we know that this is osmosis, and the water is going to move from high to low concentration. So we need to find the answer that says that it's going to move from high to low concentration. Water would move into the cell, causing it to swell. Okay, the water is going to move into the cell from high to low, and that would make the cell get bigger. So let's mark A and check out the other questions. We'll circle it. Water would move into the cell, causing it to shrink. Well, when something moves into a cell, it's not going to get littler. It's going to get bigger. That sounds a little hinky. Let's cross that one off. Water would move out of the cell, causing it to swell. Well, if water moves out, it's not going to swell. It's definitely going to shrink. So we'll cross that off. Water would move out of the cell, causing it to shrink. That's a true statement, but again, we're moving from high concentration to low concentration, so I'm going to say that A is the correct answer and D is not right. Question 12. Which organelle in the bacteria cell helps the bacteria to maintain the balance between its internal and external environments? So we're looking at its internal, which is the environment inside the cell where the cytoplasm is, and external. That's everything outside of the cell. So I think I'm going to draw a diagram of a bacteria. And I know that the bacteria has this membrane that kind of holds everything in. And it has a loop of DNA. And it has some ribosomes and some other stuff floating around in there. Okay, let's go through these answers. I'm going to start with D because the nucleus has a membrane, but the nucleus is definitely inside the cell. A bacteria is a prokaryote. They don't have a nucleus, so this cannot be the answer. Cytoplasm, bacteria definitely have cytoplasm, and that's what's inside the cell. So, I mean, it could, maintain the balance inside the cell. We'll leave that one alone. The cell wall. Well, I know that the only cells that have a cell wall are plants, so B can't be the answer. Answer A, the cell membrane. All cells have a cell membrane, and the cell membrane is what holds the cell together. Yeah, it holds it all together. A, that has to be the answer. 13. Bacteria live in fresh water. Which of these statements best describes what will happen when freshwater bacteria cells are placed in salt water? So if bacteria live in fresh water, this one's tricky. Let's draw a picture. So I have a cell in a container, and salt water is going to have a high concentration of salt and a lower concentration of water. And a cell is going to have salt in it and water. But I don't remember what the concentrations are. All right, let's take a look at these and see what's going to happen. Well, if the bacteria lives in fresh water, then it probably has a higher concentration of salt inside it. Okay, let's see. A, water enters the cell, causing it to expand. That's a true statement, so we're going to decide that A is a possibility. B, water enters the cell, causing it to shrink. Well, if water comes into the cell, it's definitely not going to shrink. So B can't be the answer. Water leaves the cell, causing it to shrink. Again, that's a true statement. So I'm going to say that that's a possibility. So I'm going to circle that also as a possibility. Water leaves the cell, causing it to expand. Well, if water leaves the cell, it's not going to expand and get bigger. So that one can't be the answer. Well, if the bacteria live in fresh water, then they have to have things in place to keep the water from leaving out of the cell, because coming into the cell. Yeah, coming into the cell. Because there's a higher concentration of salt inside the cell than there is outside of the cell. But then I put it in salt water. So I bet there's a higher concentration of salt in salt water than there is inside the cell. So I'm going to choose C. The water leaves the cell, causing the cell to shrink. And we're going to cross out A. Okay, number 14. Birds and mammals and theropod dinosaurs can maintain a constant body temperature. The ability to maintain a constant body temperature is an example of. Okay, maintaining a constant body temperature. Let's go through these and see what we think. A, respiration. That's breathing. That doesn't really have a lot to do with body temperature, so we're going to skip that out. Homeostasis. Well, that means maintaining a balance in the body. If you want to maintain a constant temperature and have it be in balance, it could be B. C, a reptilian trait. Well, birds and mammals are reptiles, so I don't think that's the answer. An acquired trait, that's something you get like when you get a scar or something, you get after you're born. And this kind of sounds like something that they were born with, so I don't think it's D, an acquired trait. So we're going to go with B, homeostasis, maintaining balance. Okay, we're going to use a diagram to answer questions 14 and 15. And this looks like some dialysis tubing inside a iodine solution, and there's a starch solution inside the dialysis tubing. So let's go through 15. If the dialysis sac is permeable only to water and iodine, what will the solution in the beaker and the sac look like after 2 hours? Well, if only water and iodine can go through the sac, that means the starch is going to stay inside the sac. All right, let's see if we can find an answer that says that. The starch solution in the dialysis sac will turn blue-black, and the iodine solution will not change. Well, if the starch isn't coming out of the tube, and that's what makes the iodine turn a blue-black color, then A could be a correct answer.
All right, Wildcats. Number 16. Which one of these processes is demonstrated in the experiment shown in the diagram? Well, let's take a look at our choices. A, cellular respiration. B, active transport. C, endocytosis. Or D, diffusion. Well, it looks to me like A and B require energy, and I know what we're looking at is not. Not sure what C is, but I also remember Miss Craney, when she did the experiment, saying that she was showing a diffusion experiment. So I've eliminated A and B. Not sure about what C is, but I do remember Miss Craney saying that this is definitely a diffusion experiment. So the answer is D, diffusion. Number 17. While working in her garden on a hot day, Katie begins to sweat. This process that helps Katie to keep her body fluids in balance is called A, homeostasis, B, osmosis, C, meiosis, or D, mitosis. Right off the bat, I know that C and D are talking about cell division. So that's definitely not keeping the body fluids in balance. It has nothing to do with that. So we're going to mark those out. Osmosis, if you can just look back to the past questions, you know that you had to answer, I think, 2 osmosis questions. And we know that that's diffusion of water from a high concentration to a low concentration. It's definitely not B. The best answer here is A. To keep your body fluids in balance is definitely called homeostasis. Circulation.